What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Honor the Land. I am Max Loeb, Loeb's Leads, here with Zay and a very special guest, Mac the Buffalo, here to talk everything going on with the Cleveland Browns right now. This morning on Wednesday, depending on when you're listening or watching, we got some crazy injury news. Multiple starters placed on IR. Mo Hurst, Juan Thornhill, even Tony Fields II. Like it's all bad right now. But some good news. Some good news. We have Jed Wills, Jack Conklin, both practicing today. So there is some good. There is some silver lining to all of this. But what was your guys' initial reaction to all the injury report stuff? Because that came out of nowhere. It came out of left field.
I don't remember seeing any players going down. Juan Thornhill graded 82.3 or something. And he was, after that miscommunication that he had, he was flying around everywhere and making plays. I don't remember Tony Fields going down with something. I don't remember Mo Hurst. Like, there was nothing on the broadcast that I remember when these guys went down. So it was, not only was it a gut punch, but it was like getting shanked with like a jail knife or something. That one hurt a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I mean, for me, it was it's pretty weird seeing Juan Thornhill on the injury report for the second year in a row, especially with that calf injury. Now, I can't confirm if it's the same calf that was bothering him all last year, but you have to remember he missed several games with this calf. Stefanski alluded that he had some kind of flare-up. So it's just like one of those to where it's difficult, but also at the same time, it is good to know that we have that kind of depth in the safety room. We have Rodney McLeod, who's been a very serviceable vet, and he's played multiple years under Jim Schwartz's defense. And then in the D tackle room, Quentin Jefferson is going to be huge, as well as Shelby Harris. So we got guys that are going to have to pick up the slack, but we do have that depth. So not all is lost, on this Wednesday here. It's going to be tough, but the Browns defense can rally.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said not all is lost, because another little piece of silver lining that I saw is you can put anybody on injured reserve whenever you want, but this was kind of the Browns' first opportunity to do it, and Dave Njoku was not put on injured reserve. I doubt he plays this weekend. I think everybody's pretty much on the same page. But if they're feeling right now that they don't need to put him on IR, better safe than sorry move if they did. Like, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world either. Definitely a positive to take away. But the depth is huge. We talked about it all offseason. If there's one defense that's going to need their depth to step up and have confidence in it, I think it is the Browns. I mean, Rodney McLeod, Ronnie Hickman will probably get some snaps as well, looking at those two guys. Obviously, the interior defensive line, Mike Hall, kind of still a question mark. That stuff is all up in the air right now. But Quentin Jefferson, Shelby Harris, all those guys stepping in, they've done it in the past. And I feel comfortable with them being able to step in because they have done it in the past.
Well, your boy is actually listed as the number one right now in Hickman, which we speculated that hopefully we wouldn't see him for some time because we were figuring that this defense would stick together. So we see him as the number one guy. They slotted over D'Anthony Bell from that strong safety spot to the free safety spot. So he's going to be backing up Ronnie Hickman. And then Mike Hall is listed as third behind Jefferson. It's going to be nice to see some of these younger players because we're in this weird little bridge kind of year where 1 year guys are here, someone's not going to be here next year. You're going to get a good sample size of who's going to lead you into next year, in my opinion. Yeah. So I've got full confidence in Ronnie Hickman. I think we've seen him do it. Him being a rookie last year, I'm sure he's probably, a little bit more seasoned this year. The game's probably a little bit more slower for him. So like you guys alluded to, man, we've been in this situation before. We'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So I got to ask you guys this. Do you think that there's any possibility now with Jim Schwartz's defense, in terms of what they do on the back end, nobody's asked to do just one role, right?
Yeah.
But when I start to think about it, do you think that they shift Grant Delpit a little bit more to that free safety, to that kind of center field role? He did have quite the free safety role in terms of 2022. Now, that was a different defense under Joe Woods. But when he had, that big snap share at free safety, only 42% completion allowed, only 110 yards given up, and three interceptions. So, he can play that deep safety role. I know that Ronnie Hickman's more of a box safety.
Yeah.
Same with D'Anthony Bell. Rodney McLeod's more of a utility guy, but it's going to be definitely something to watch, just to see where they have him and where they're kind of rotating guys. Because again, in Jim Schwartz's defense, especially with it being single high, there's no definitive position for all these defensive backs.
Yeah, definitely no definitive position, and that makes it really hard for an offense like that. That's what I've noticed, especially as the years have gone on. The very beginning of this year and last year with Jim Schwartz, like there really is no traditional box guy. There's really no traditional center field guy. They rotate around a lot, and it's hard for a defense, or hard for an offense. But I do think when you look at Jacksonville, like they pregame both rosters 24 hours ago. I looked at it and I was like, they will not be able to move the Cleveland Browns up front on the ground. Like I thought the Browns had a pretty clear advantage there. Now you lose a guy who's solid in the run game in Juan Thornhill. Now you lose Mo Hurst. That's a guy you got to not only lose but on the defensive line, but bring another guy, less experienced guy inside. Like it's going to be a different animal for the Browns up front this week. And I thought Greg Delpit was okay. I worried about him in the run game. I saw some not great things in the run game this past week. So if you want to put him in center field, I'm with it. But I think it's going to come down to those interior guys. Like Dalvin Tomlinson is an absolute monster in there, and he will eat double teams like nobody's business. But the number 2 defensive tackles have to be able to move people, and obviously those front 7 guys have to be able to step in too. But I'm really fascinated to see what they do in terms of DB rotation, DB depth. And Rodney McLeod's a really interesting one too, because, he can play nickel, he can play safety. They would never put him outside, but they can put him in different positions on the inside. Maybe he helps there. I'm fascinated to see what they do.
I think Grant's going to stay flying around. He makes plays coming downhill. He's one of those guys. I'd rather not see him. I'm trying to think back to that Joe Woods defense, and I know Grant, he can be a ball hawk at times, but I think Ronnie Hickman kind of has a knack for the ball. He just seems to always kind of be around it, whether it be off a tip pass or making the right play. Yeah. I think, like I said, with him getting another season behind him and now not being thrown in at the back end of the year, you're fresh out of training camp. Everything should be fresh into your mind when you talk about scheme. And I'm sure he's probably waiting for this opportunity. So I'm anxious to see what the guy at Ohio State can do. I mean, we're going to have to, because we don't have a choice at this point for at least 4 weeks.
Yeah. And you know what? It's good that it's happening early on in the season. You get to experience these guys trying different things, being in new spots, and you feel more comfortable, at least with what you know with your depth. Whether you're physically more comfortable with your depth is another thing. But moving along the other side of the ball with depth, the offensive line, like we talked about at the very, very beginning, Jed Wills, Jack Conklin, both back this week. Now, there's a lot to talk about with the tackles. I thought the interior offensive line was fine. Like, I didn't think anything noticeably bad showed up. But those tackles, what are you guys thinking? How are you feeling about the tackle situation right now?
You can go first if you want.
I mean, I'll take it right off here. I think it's going to be a good thing that we're not seeing a certain offensive tackle on the field. James Hudson, he wasn't really expected to do much, and unfortunately, he's been thrown into a big role every single season. It's great effort out there, but he's flat out not getting it done. He allowed the most pressures out of the entire offensive line with 6. So it's. I mean, you can't really say anything good about an offensive tackle that's getting your quarterback hit 4 times in a game. I mean, that's pretty bad. So the fact to have Jed and Jack both back this, I think it's going to be pretty good. Now the question is, who's going to start out of the 3? Because personally, I do think that DeJuan Jones is one of the better pass protectors on this team. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. But to your point, Max, the interior of the line's pretty solid. I am still kind of keeping my eye on Joe Platonio. Nothing against him, but, he is in his 10th, 11th year here. So it's just going to kind of be interesting to see how long he's kind of holding up. He had some back problems last year. So I don't know if he can hold up for 16 games, but the good news is just like on the defensive side of the ball, Brown's got depth, and that Zach Center pick, he's waiting in the wings and he's chomping at the bit to get his opportunity. So I think they're going to fare better this week than they did last week. And I also think that from a protection standpoint, I think they're going to tweak a couple things. You know, it wasn't just all on the offensive line here. Brown's got to get rid of the ball. It's just something that Deshaun has struggled with since he's gotten here. You know, he was sixth this week. You know, an average time to throw. Last year, he was third. Year before, he was second. So, you know, we got to do a better job of getting the ball out, especially against this Jacksonville front. You know, you got Josh Allen, as well as oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the guy, Trayvon Walker.
Yeah.
So, you know, they don't have a D line where you can take that 3-4 second drop back and, you know, you have all day. So, and then with that as well, Deontay Foreman didn't run the ball.
No.
Last week. So it's just like they got to get that ground game going. And I think they tweak it from a game plan standpoint because I get it. You know, we brought in Ken Dorsey. We want to run more of a spread offense. We want to make Sean a little bit more comfortable. That's fine. But at some point, you got to run the ball. You got to establish the run, and you got to help him out a little bit because it's, you know, like Stefanski said, it's not all on one person. You know, collectively as an offense, they got to get better. So they got to become a little bit more balanced.
Yeah, I really think that's a good point with Foreman because you look at last week, obviously the Dolphins run a very different type of run scheme than the Browns do, but they really want to, you know, get everybody in space and get those fast guys with one or two ways to go, let them put their foot in the ground. Like the Browns, they got to stay out of the chains. I've talked about it so much, and sometimes that's 3-4 yards. I think Deontay Foreman would do a better job at that 3 yards in a cloud of dust football than Jerome Ford would.
I mean, what about Pierre Strong? The run game, period.
Yeah.
They completely just went away from the run game. And you don't even try to establish it, and your identity is grounding and pounding with Wyatt Teller and Joe Patonio, who are two of the best run blockers in the game. It's going to make their lives a living hell when the defense can scheme knowing that they're going to go for the pass rush versus the run. You're putting your offensive line behind the 8 ball. You're putting Deshaun Watson behind the 8 ball, and you're basically just lining up for a double shot. And then Jerome Ford's life's not going to get any easier when you try to run the ball. So it's all a domino effect, and it all connects. And quite frankly, you know, we were all so high on DeJuan Jones. His mental's not there right now. So it maybe Jack Conklin may spark something to get his, you know, get it to where we need him to be. Because if Jedrick Wills doesn't come out here and he continues to do this week-to-week BS crap, like, I'm all for seeing Jack Conklin going to the left side. I want, at this point, we need Conklin on the line at all costs, because say what you want, you don't just throw away all pro talent because injuries are a plague thing. There's got to be talent still locked away in there, and I need my fire to get fueled back up into DeJuan Jones, because I don't know what happened between last year and this year, but from the training camp reports to the week one, it all aligns up. So we need to see improvement this week.
Absolutely. Mac, I'm going to pull up this pass protection for you. You want to talk a little bit about this, what this looked like for the Browns?
Yeah. So, you know, again, and I'm not just saying this because I played offensive line in high school and college, but, you know, we can't sit here and say that it was just the entire offensive line. PFF ranked, you know, true pass set, which means taking away play action, taking away the quick passing game, you know, screens, things of that nature, like a true drop back that's more than 2.5 seconds. They had the Browns ranked at 15. So, you know, take the big thing is here, you know, take a look who's on the far left. Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
You know, they had both their starting offensive tackles gone. They had one of their starting guards down. They had to bring in another guy. And so they had a makeshift offensive line, yet Matt Stafford was able to get it done. You know, so we can't just sit here and blame the offensive line and say, you know, hey, like we just can't get it done with who we have, because we, at the end of the day, we got to make it work, whether it's scheme, whether it's, you know, trying kind of different things, whether it's the quick passing game. Now, it doesn't help that our best yards after catch weapon is going to be confirmed out this week. At least that's what they told everybody in the presser today, that he's not going to be playing in Jacksonville. But like you said, It's good to know that he is not on IR, which means he can be eligible to return next week. But what's really stuck out to me, and I didn't believe it when I saw it, but Cleology tweeted out that, despite the amount of pressures that the offensive line gave up, not a single offensive lineman was credited with giving up a sack per PFF.
That, yeah.
And because I was like, there's no way, right? There's no way that you could give up that many pressures as a unit, because total it was 18 pressures total. So I was like, there's no way that you can give up 18 pressures and not give up a single sack. That doesn't make any sense. But I'm looking through, and that's the truth.
That's crazy. Yeah.
People are going to ask, well, like, what goes into that? What giving up a sack? So I looked into the definition of how they grade it, and per PFF, they do not assign a sack given up to the offensive line if the sack is outside the pocket.
Okay.
So that's kind of another thing that we have to think about here is that, and I don't know whether it was just kind of the first time in the offense, and I really hate to sit here and give excuses, to a veteran quarterback like Deshaun, but, it was his first game out there in this new offense, right? So the awareness, it's just not at 100% in terms of where his routes are, and, because you have to think, the quarterback's best friend is knowing where your targets are, and if it's a brand new offense, the familiarity is just not there yet. Yeah. So I'm really looking for Deshaun to stay in the pocket more, to deliver those throws, because guys were open. It wasn't perfect, but it could be made. So just kind of something to think about as they go down to Jacksonville, and I'd like to think, because especially since he's been here, Kevin Stefanski has been known for not going into these skids. 2020 was kind of an anomaly in terms of his coaching career, because you didn't see a lot of back-to-back losses, for Kevin Stefanski coached teams here. So I really think that it's going to be a different story offensively, at least from a numbers perspective. So, just kind of something that I'm going to be looking for this week.
Definitely. I think that's a great point. And I think when you look at what the Jacksonville Jaguars, or at least what they did last week, it's going to be moderately different compared to the Dallas Cowboys. Like Cowboys, I think it was almost 53% cover 3, a lot of single high stuff, making it look different every single time, but a lot of single high stuff. You'll see some of that, but the Jaguars played so much man. It was insane. So that zone timing, if they face that similar concept, similar style of defense, will be kind of less important. It'll be more, where are your matchups, Deshaun? Where do you want to go? And Christian actually brought up a great point, and I know, Zay, you probably want to talk a lot about this, the potential of Cedric Tillman. Like, you saw Jerry Jeudy line up in the slot a lot more than I thought, but more than Elijah Moore did. So when you push a guy like Elijah Moore outside, who's smaller, it's not really his natural position, does a conversation need to be had about Cedric Tillman going over Elijah Moore in the depth chart?
The conversation needs to start with this play calling and figuring out if we can actually throw the damn ball. Like when we saw Joe, like the beauty of Cedric Tillman is the fact that he can go underneath, he can do a jet sweep, he can go a seam route, he can go over the top. Cedric Tillman can do a lot of different things. But I go back to last year and I think about how I seen Cedric Tillman utilized, and when he was at his best, he was catching 15-yard seam routes with a guy right in front of him or over the top of him.
Yeah.
We're not going to, whether he's in or not, can we even throw the damn ball? So until we can even go out here and show that we can throw passes further than 5 to 7 yards, it doesn't even matter, because Moore is probably better on the underneath routes. Moore is probably better if you can give him the ball and let him go do something. But I need to see us be able to throw the ball downfield before I can even talk about my boy Cedric Tillman, because I'd rather not see him catch the ball on a 3-yard hitch and try to make something with his feet, when I've seen him do it play in and play out with PJ Walker, with Joe Flacco, with any quarterback you can name, going across the middle and making a tough catch with defenders in his face.
Yeah, he can totally do it. Mac, I'm going to pull up that other slide you had too, the quarterback accuracy separation. This week, I think that separation is probably a little more important if they're going to see more man. What were you looking at specifically here?
So, the one that really sticks out to me, and the one kind of play to where I can say, okay, it's not entirely Watson's fault. I mean, he had Amari Cooper on that slant and go. It was probably one of the best routes I've seen in a while. It's a real shame that he couldn't come down with that because he put his defender on skates and he had about like a 7-8 yard cushion, going into the end zone. I really wish he would have hauled that in. But it just goes to show that there were guys open. And especially with the Jaguars playing more man defense this week, it's definitely going to be something that I'm looking at. Now, to Zay's point here, we got to be able to throw the damn ball. We got to be able to push that ball downfield. And kind of to tie in Christian's comment, your safety net, your quarterback's pacifier is out this week, David Njoku, your tight end. So you got to have a big body guy, and Hillman's a big body receiver. His biggest knack, is his inability to separate. Well, he's a contested catch guy. He's that kind of guy that's going to attack the ball aggressively. He can catch well in traffic. So what better way to build your quarterback's confidence than to throw it up in tight coverage and have your guy come down with it? Now, nothing to knock Jerry Jeudy, but he's just not a contested catch kind of guy. It just hasn't really been, his MO since coming into the league. And Amari Cooper recently kind of has struggled a little bit with the, and while he does amazing with his, with his jump balls and with his contested catches, in terms of conversion percentage of contested targets, not all that great. So, the Browns wide receiving room does need to step up in terms of, now they're great at getting open, but they gotta, we gotta adjust. I know that people aren't going to, and I'll be one of the first to say it, that we got bottom 5 QB play last week, and Deshaun's got to step that up. But as long as Deshaun Watson is the starting quarterback, everyone else around him kind of has to elevate the game. We can't treat this as, okay, Deshaun Watson has to play superhero ball to get this offense going. Realistically, Deshaun's just not the same guy that he was in Houston. And everybody else around him has to play at a high level. We can't just expect him to elevate the entire offense anymore. It's just not realistic. So what this wide receiving core has to do is not only do they have to get open, but they have to come down with those tough catches, because realistically, I just don't think that he's going to throw people. Well, I should say in a majority, he's not going to throw people open. We're going to have to come down with those tough catches. We're going to have to make those improbable catches down the field and in tight coverage, because at least it looks like it. And I would like to know your guys' feedback on it. But it just seems like there's just not a lot of confidence with Deshaun Watson throwing the ball right now. And what better way to raise his confidence than catching those tough balls?
Yeah. Zay, what do you think? Do you think it's a confidence thing at this point? Do you think certain receivers need to step up more than others? How do you view the receiver situation in relation to Deshaun?
I think this isn't a receiver situation. Like, if you want to know my honest opinion, like, I'm kind of running with it now. I go back to, this is when Deshaun Watson first got here. The compatibility match just isn't there with Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski. It's obvious. It's been time and time again. You bring a new offensive coordinator in to try to switch things up. Just since day one, the compatibility has never been there. You never got the feel that Deshaun Watson would run through a wall for Kevin Stefanski. Everything just kind of seems like it's come into work and let's do business, and then we can go home about our daily, and do that. But until the coach and the quarterback can be on the same page, it doesn't matter if we got prime Julio Jones. It doesn't matter if we got Megatron. Like, your quarterback and coach have got to be on the same page. And the great thing when you look at the great quarterbacks is you look across the league, and majority of the ones that are winning are the teams that have success in recent years. Their quarterback and their coach are on the same page. And then everything else can be fall in line, however you want to put it. But if you don't got that in line, your body's going to be out of whack. And that's what's happening right now.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think this week especially, I'm fascinated to see what this, assuming we see what Jacksonville did coverage-wise against the Browns this week, what that looks like. Because, Mike Zimmer ran a game plan that was kind of different from what he usually did. Like, you expected a lot of man. He didn't see as much as he thought. And then Jacksonville almost played man to a fault against Miami, I don't think they liked the matchups in man out there, and they still did it. So fascinated to see if that's the way it goes. Looking at some of the separation stuff from the Cleveland Browns against man this past week, highest win rate, Jerry Jeudy. Highest targets per route run, Jerry Jeudy. He averaged a yard per route run too. So like that's a guy I think you can find your matchup. You can do what you like, but it's also very interesting to note Tyson Campbell on the outside, listed as doubtful now. It seems like he's not playing. So the Jaguars do lose a good corner in Tyson Campbell. How the Browns attack that? Do the Browns attack that? We wait to see. We wait to see if the Jaguars do anything to kind of mask that defensively too. But while we're on the topic of the wide receiver room, I got to bring up Kadarius Toney because that's somebody who I've watched for a long time. I am honestly probably a bigger fan of his game than a lot of other people are, and I think he can provide unique special teams value to this team. I think that's kind of the consensus across the board. But do you guys think there is a home for him in the receiver room as a gadget guy, as a guy who can buy eyes in motion? Do you guys see any type of home for Kadarius Toney in the receiver room?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he fits exactly what you want. Elijah, like they keep trying to force feed Elijah Moore this baby food that he doesn't want to eat. And it's just like, bro, every time he gets this jet sweep, he's running backwards more than he's running forward. And that's nothing against Elijah Moore. He's trying to make a play. But when you talk about the two things that he's great at, it's creating space. He's electric with the ball. We've seen it with the Giants of the very small sample size, and we've seen it in Kansas City. We've seen it in the Super Bowl. Here's what I'll say with the special teams thing. I still am intrigued with Jalen Darden. I mentioned it when we first talked about it, man. Like when I first saw him at training camp, I watched him and I was like, this guy is like explosive. He's super decisive in where he wants to go. And as soon as he gets the hole, he's gone. And he displayed that not only in the punt return, but in the kick return game too. He had like 97 on both sides of the ball. So it would suck to see Kadarius Toney take that from him because I still want to see what Darden has to offer in that aspect. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about the receiver room, I think it's a great fit when you talk about having 5 receivers in and having a guy motion in and letting Kadarius be that guy to potentially get a jet sweep or a wrap around. Or didn't he do like a pass back to somebody and they go for it?
Yeah, like, the Travis Kelce. Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things that you could do with Toney, and I definitely think it could fit in the Stefanski offense.
Isn't it so weird that they signed Toney after Darden's game too? Like I look at Toney as a special teams guy. Mm-hmm. And they sign him a day or 2 days after that. And I'm like, oh, this is a little odd. Maybe it's not just special teams.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I just want, if I can put a message out to Browns fans right now, please do not take this signing as a knock on what Jalen Darden did in the special teams room on Sunday, because Jalen Darden is a damn good returner. I am sure that there are 31 teams out there other than the Browns that would love to have him return punts and kicks. But flat out, they need more talent in the wide receiver room. Kadarius Toney does both for him. He's an excellent returner, and his route running will get you open, and he's got sweet feet and can make guys miss, in the open field. And that's kind of what the Browns do. And to Zay's point, and you hit it right on the head, brother. They are trying so hard to feed Elijah Moore in this short game, whether it's the end arounds, the sweeps, that kind of like short route play. But, as talented as Elijah Moore is, Kadarius Toney is much more explosive, in the short game. And that's just a fact. I think that the Browns are looking for some kind of offensive spark. Mm-hmm. The offensive spark was out there, in free agency, so they decided to pick him up. And I think that he is now. We haven't seen that elevation to the active roster yet, but I think that is coming soon. I think they're just more or less just kind of trying to figure out whether or not he's game ready. But they need some kind of spark, and they need yak. They need yards after the catch because their most dangerous guy, like I said earlier, David Njoku, he's not playing this week. So they got to find it some other way. And I just don't think that it's a little disappointing. But of course, the guy's a rookie. They're just not ready to give that big role to Jamari Thrash yet. Yeah. And it's just like clear that Elijah Moore just isn't getting it done in that short term and what they need. So it's really I think that it's exciting. I don't think it's world breaking that they brought him in, but I do think that it's exciting because not only is he going to give you a spark in the return game, but he'll give you a spark in the receiving room. And again, this is not a knock at all on Jalen Darden. But with Kadarius Toney, you get the best of both worlds. And sometimes the NFL, in terms of roster spots, is just a flat out number game. They need somebody that can do something in the return game, but doesn't take away from a spot in the receiving room. And Kadarius Toney does just that.
Yeah, you're killing two birds with one stone. That is for sure with Kadarius Toney. It's a great point. I'm glad he said no active roster bump yet, because I do think it's coming. I think that game, week 3, Giants kind of staring him in the face. He will definitely have some incentive to get back for that. But before we sign off, we will have a full breakdown of this game coming out Saturday morning. Before we do though, Mac, I want you to give us your offensive player to watch and defensive player to watch going into the game this Sunday.
So, I mean, offensive player to watch, it's Jerry Jeudy. Absolutely. I think that Doug Peterson is going to try his best to lock down Amari Cooper. And Jerry Jeudy, I thought he had a pretty decent game. They're playing a lot of man coverage this week, and Jerry Jeudy is the route runner. He's going to be the guy that's going to get you open, going to get open. So, we have to connect with him. The run game is still kind of coming along. So, the pass game has to pick up the slack here. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, we need to go pass heavy, abandon the run game. No, it still needs to be balanced. But player to watch for me is Jerry Jeudy. I think that if he is north of 50, 60 yards, I think they're going to be successful on offense because a lot of that attention, again, Amari Cooper is going to get that. Jerry Jeudy has to have his coming out game for the offense to be successful, and I think that they have a solid chance. Now on defense, I hate to, and it's not that Myles Garrett had a good game last week, but with offense struggling, defense has to take over, and it's no secret the Browns defense on the road was not the same Browns defense at home.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to this defense getting after it. I mean, they put Trevor Lawrence in a box last year. They had him in absolute hell. And I expect kind of the same thing this year because looking at Jacksonville, I mean, their best wide receiver is gone. So you don't have to guard Calvin Ridley anymore. Not to put anything on Gabe Davis, but he's just not a wide receiver one. So you have a strong secondary, and I don't think that the Jaguars' offensive line is top 10 by any means. So I'm really looking for Myles Garrett to take over this game, and he's going to need to because, like I said earlier, with Deshaun struggling and the offense still trying to figure things out, the defense has to take over, and who better take over than your star defensive player?
Exactly. I could not agree more. So Jerry Jeudy, Myles Garrett, two guys that Mac is looking at. Zay and I will have our players to watch on Saturday. We appreciate you guys hopping on to watch. If you are new, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the episode coming out this Saturday. If you're listening on Spotify, any other podcast platform, make sure you follow so the next one pops up for you as well. Zay, any final words before we sign off?
Here we go, Roddies. Here we go.
We appreciate you guys again, and we will see you next time.